Testing, 1, 2, 3. I don't even know if this is lined up. I hope it is. Like I say, it's been a while since I've been doing my reviews. Okay, so today I'm going to be reviewing the story and the engine. Okay, so this one is written by Enua Ellams, and I watched the behind the scenes show. I can't even remember what it's called. You know, the one with Stefan? I don't know if it's called Stefan Powell. I don't know. I grew up when Confidential was on, so nothing's going to beat Confidential for me. But I try and watch those to try and get like I like to know the process or the lack of process sometimes behind decisions that are being made. And this guy is obviously like a very talented, thoughtful writer. So he comes from a theatre background. Something really interesting, like I do not know what is going on with the behind the scenes of this series. I have no insider information, by the way. I'm just like sitting here watching stuff, watching too much stuff because I'm obsessed. But I don't know, there just seems to be like a really odd vibe around the show right now. Like people weren't sure, oh, is the show even going to come back? Is it going to be cancelled? I feel like when you watch, I think it is called Unleashed, it's strange. It's almost like Ncuti Gatwa seems to have checked out at this point. It seems very strange. So the story about Enua being asked onto Doctor Who as well, it's just another strange thing. I don't think there's anything like sinister about it, but you've got Ncuti Gatwa saying that as soon as he became the Doctor, you know, he was trying to push Russell T Davies and saying, look, I think this guy is a writer that you should give a chance on this, and I think he'd be a great idea. You've got Russell then saying that, like, he kind of, like, he's always wanted that, and he's desperately wanted for Enua to be part of the show. And then Anua's saying that he messaged Russell T Davies during the first series to be like, oh, I like what you're doing with it. And then Russell was like, oh, brilliant, would you like to come and write for the show? And it just all seems a bit weird. I think that there are some really great writers on the show, and I do admire a lot of Anua's. From what I've seen of Enua, I greatly admire Enua. I'm not talking about him in particular, but I do just get the impression that at this point in time, the show is really like, I don't know how it's being run. Like, it feels like if your mate's part of it, then you'll get invited into it. It almost feels like that all across the board. It feels like, oh, if you've got a mate who knows a mate who can put in a good word for you, you can be part of it. And I just think that's really strange. I do think that's really odd. Like, I'm not 100% convinced that everything behind the scenes is like, I don't think they know what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? I feel like, spoiler alert for the next episode, I wanted to go straight onto the Interstellar Song Contest because I've got so much to say about it. But I thought, no, I'm not going to skip over this episode because I've written the notes and there's some really enjoyable things about this episode. But I do get the impression, why does it feel like nobody's steering it? Like, why does it feel like things are... Spoiler alert, right, the Mrs. Flood reveal, which I'll talk about in the next review. It doesn't feel like it was designed that way. I really don't... I'm not convinced that that was the original story. It almost feels like it was altered as they went. Somehow? I don't know. I could be completely wrong, and if so, like, completely ignore me. Like, it might all be all part of, like, a big plan. But it really feels like this series is... I don't know. I don't know if they know where they're going with it. I just don't get that impression. And especially because, as I'll get into in this episode, the morality and the story behind these episodes doesn't seem to follow. Like, it doesn't seem to do that. The morals between episodes change so drastically that I feel like we're getting this... I don't know, it just feels like there's no oversight. Like, it doesn't feel like a consistent story running through, beyond the point that every time they go somewhere, they've got to get the Vindicator out and they're trying to get Belinda home. But I just think that's really odd. I just don't think there seems to be, like, a real trajectory happening. So this episode, morally, I really enjoyed. You're probably tired of me talking about, like, morals in fiction and morals in Doctor Who. And I think, yeah, you can show characters behaving in awful ways, dark ways. I love a villain. I love to see a good, well-written villain. I just think it's really strange when the narrative itself is so, like, all over the place. I don't think they have written the 15th Doctor consistently enough. I really don't. It makes me frustrated. And I will say this because I think the same thing kind of happened with Jodie's Doctor. I don't think they are taking as much care and as much risks with those characters as they could. I think what they're doing is they're kind of pretending to be really progressive, and it's like, oh, we're touching this issue, oh, we're touching this issue. But whenever they do touch on it, they don't get anywhere, like, they don't even go under the surface. They don't get to the surface of the issue. So then you've got people who are saying, I don't like this. This feels like it's identity politics, right? And I hate that because it's like a right-wing thing. But there is a point to be made, certainly, about how sometimes you can have something that's on the surface trying to present itself as like, oh, it's touching these issues. But it's actually not. This series feels less progressive than the first Russell T Davies series, and that was ages ago. I think the Moffat era ended up a lot more progressive than this series, genuinely, and I had my issues with Moffat towards the start. But when you look at his run with the 12th Doctor, he was taking some big swings. He was trying to say something, right? And I think 12 kind of lives in our minds as this character that was like, he was anti-capitalist, right? He was quite radical, wasn't he? And again, that's in keeping with like when you think about like the third Doctor, right? I feel like that it's weird that aspect of the Doctor has disappeared at the time when we've had the first female Doctor and the first man of colour playing the Doctor. Those things have just disappeared. I don't know, it feels lazy. So let's go for the pros and cons of this episode. I wrote like a pros and cons list, and I don't want this to go on forever because my next one with the Interstellar Song Contest is going to go on for a long time, because what an absolute disaster that thing was. We're not going to go into it here, but possibly, I genuinely think it's probably one of the worst things Doctor Who has ever offered, politically. Hands down, one of the absolute worst. Genuinely. Okay, the story and the engine, which I really did, I enjoyed it. I think, let's just go for the pros and cons. Okay, the pros list. So I've got the Doctor's characterisation. So I think this episode is probably, I think it's my favourite characterisation for 15. I think he comes across as this is a writer who sees 15 as a full character, right? I think he goes through lots of emotions, he goes through betrayal, I think this is a good episode for him. And I think it's the sort of episode that I imagine Ncuti Gatwa probably enjoy making, because it's got some depth to it, like to his character. His character in this episode feels a lot of depth. He goes through a journey emotionally, and I feel like we've lost that, because that is not happening in a lot of the other episodes. The journey's not taking place. I like the visuals, and I like the setting. So first of all, this is an episode which I like it when the show takes a big swing. And I have a lot of issues with the Chibnall era's writing. Like, I think a lot of the character writing was so dead during that era. But I think you would always have beautiful visuals, right? There was a big kind of scope for that. And I also like that he took us to there were some weird episodes, right? There were some weird places, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. But I like that. I like the idea that they're taking a chance on things that are different. So tonally, like, you could see a clip from this episode, like, visually speaking, and you know it's from this episode. It's got such a distinct style. You're not going to be like, oh, what's that one from? You know, the colours, everything. And I do think the setting, like, this is a problem which Doctor Who is going to run into. If it goes on, which I hope it does, then, you know, we're getting to a point where it almost feels like we're, for some people, it feels like we're running out of ideas. I think you can make ideas go forever and ever. But anyway, I digress. I think, obviously, one of the main things that you can do with that is you go into other countries and cultures. Right now, like, why not? You've got a whole globe of history to tell. You're never going to run out of stories. Or if you are, it'll be so far in the future. I think that's a great idea. Like, to set the episodes in a modern-ish, I know this was 2019, set it in a different country, set it in a different culture on Earth. Like, you're not going to run out of stories that way. I really liked the concepts behind this episode. So, I don't know what Russell's doing with the Pantheon kind of thing. I'm not sure I like the Pantheon style thing with the gods. Maybe I could get on board with that. Sometimes I think, oh, I'm starting to like it. Then other times I think it doesn't feel grounded in anything, sometimes. But I think this episode actually gets into that. So in a series which has kind of been all about the gods, this is the episode where I feel like you're actually getting, like, a genuine discussion of faith. The meaning of faith. Like, and I don't always think it lands. I think that the episode needed to be longer. I think it's quite heavy on exposition. I think that there are tweaks that could have been made to it. But I do think this episode takes the brief and thinks, right, this theme of gods, this theme of humanity, they've got that. This episode has those things. They're delved into in a way that just hasn't been delved into in the other episodes. And then the ultimate moral of the episode. This is how I enjoy the Doctor being written. And people came at me for the Conrad thing before, but I will say it. Because it's fiction, right, we're not in the world of the story. Like, it's all being presented to us. Even, like, the meta fact that this episode is about stories and the morals of stories. And Inua talks about how in Nigerian culture, you know, stories are often moral. They teach us to understand other people, like the empathy, like that runs through the episode on, like, a really meta level. Because you've got a Doctor here that saves the civilians, but he also saves the villain. Now, this is, for me, this is gorgeous. I don't mind if, like, a villain decides to turn down the Doctor trying to save them. But at the Doctor's core, the way I like to see the Doctor written, could be wrong, other people could like a different thing. I like the idea that the Doctor believes he has that hope, and he thinks, right, I'm going to try and reach for that villain. I am going to try and bring them back to themselves. If there's something in them, that's what I'm going to do. I loved the moral of this episode. The Doctor came across as a real, genuine hero. Even, like, the sense that the first we know of him is the story being told of how there was a fire and he shows up to help. That is what I want the Doctor to be. Like, the Doctor tries to help people. That's his aim. You can't always save people. Some people don't want to be saved. Some people are so far gone into their hatred and their evil that they've gone too far. They're too stubborn. But I want to see the Doctor try. And I think the Doctor has done that consistently through different incarnations. I really like to see that happening. So that made me feel so much better after Lucky Day, where I just felt like it was so cruel. That episode was narratively so cruel. That's in my last review if you want to go and know what I thought about that. So, right, I'm kind of getting onto, like, the cons list now about this episode. So the things, I think there was a lot of exposition in this episode. I definitely think a lot of the stuff was told. I think Belinda is lacking in this episode. And I don't even think it's just this episode. I think in general, she started off really strong. And I was thinking, oh, we're going to get, like, this sort of characterization where her and the Doctor are, like, butting heads. You know, she's very opinionated. And they're these two strong figures. And it feels like somehow she's drifted into that space of being like, I just need to tell the Doctor how amazing he is. He's the best guy ever. Wow. And it's like, I don't like it. I don't like it. And I think this episode, obviously there's a lack of Belinda in it. But in general, I just don't think she has much to do. I really don't. I mean, the main characters, I like the fact that there's a focus on, you know, their actual human lives. But they needed more time for that. And that's not Inua's fault. I think maybe with a story this vast, with that many themes, I think maybe he needed a two-parter. And I think he could have carried that off. Because what he does do in this short amount of time is enough to make you care. But I just think it could have needed... I just really do think it could have done with some more time. The ideas are good, and sometimes it feels like there's a lot of ideas being thrown out. And because they're not got into, some of them don't land. But I genuinely think if you gave him, like, a longer time, I think it's all there. I just think it just needed more time to settle. I think it should have been a two-parter. But yeah, I did find that the pacing was a little off. I wasn't a fan of the pacing. There were times where it felt like they were in that room for a while, and I wanted something to happen. And I still think you can take us on that journey when you're on one set, because, I mean, we basically had that in Midnight, which is my favourite ever Doctor Who episode. But at times I did feel like it was people sitting around for too long. But then I understand, because Inua is a playwright. He's a very successful playwright. And something interesting is that his play, one of his most successful plays, is about a barbershop. And Russell T Davies said, you know, can you merge that into Doctor Who? I would be interested to find out what were his choices there, because if you're asked to be on Doctor Who, it seems like you're given your topic. And I don't know if that's necessarily... I don't know, if I was running it, which I will never do, but if I was running, I burned my bridges. Yeah, but if I ever did run it, I think I would want writers to come to me with their pitches. As long as there was, like, a theme going through it, and I'd be like, right, this is the ongoing story. A bit like when you're writing soap, you know where it's going. You get all the writers to kind of lead you there a little bit, but I'd want them to have a bit of free reign. I'm just interested, because his play is about a barbershop. Like, did he want to put that into the Doctor Who universe? Or was it that Russell T Davies had seen him writing that and thought, I want that in the universe. I'm just not sure. Okay, so now I'm going to go through like the sort of notes as we go. I'm going to try and like keep this much more brief than last week. So we begin with our main character, who is Omo, who has met the Doctor when he was a little boy. And again, like, I love the notion that this is a little boy who tried to help. He's trying to do what he can, because those are the sort of people that the Doctor loves, right? And I feel like the Doctor Who fandom needs to understand this as well, especially with the way that people are ignoring the fact that there is an active genocide happening. And even an episode which kind of touches on kind of those issues and doesn't go there. There's such a disconnect, which I think is a failing in the show. It's not a failing in this episode. But the Doctor likes a character. He likes a human being who is brave enough to speak, right? Who's going to be brave enough to try and help people. It's like Rose Tyler's thing where she said, you know, you've got to be the person that stands up when everyone runs away. And I kind of love how it begins, because almost like talking to us directly. He's having his haircut, and he says that the people laughed at him because he ran to the river with a little cup to get water, and he was trying to put the fire out. Gorgeous visual, gorgeous message. Love that. The Doctor loves a person who thinks, right, I don't have the power to change everything, but I'm going to do what I can. Even if it's just this small thing, I'm going to try and help. I very much like the fact that the Doctor is part of these human communities. Like, the idea that he's got these different humans that he admires and he spends time with, I like that very much. I also think there is, coming from Lucky Day, and you know how I feel about that, I'm very heated on Lucky Day. I'm very heated on that episode. It is interesting that it's going for the theme of the Doctor's impact on a child. Right, how does the Doctor touching your life impact you and your development? I like how Omo is telling the other guys in the barbershop that, you know, the Doctor will come. He always comes when he's needed. And what I really did love in this episode is the idea that you've got the Doctor who is actually starting to deal with being isolated and alienated, right? Because he's being treated differently. He's been treated as an other. And I feel like this was something that the Jodie era just didn't touch, which to me feels like a shame. Because I believe, like, the Doctor can regenerate into anybody. Anyone at all. And I love that. I love that idea. But I feel like if you're going to regenerate the Doctor into somebody who is a different gender, someone who is a person of colour, and you're still having them go to, like, historical places, I think that needs to be part of your story. And I don't mean that in a sense of, like, depowering your character or anything like that. But I think it offers so much more narratively. Because you've got that character stuff, which they get into here, and they haven't really... They did it a little bit in Dot and Bubble, right? The ending of Dot and Bubble makes me want to cry. But it is, like, psychologically speaking, for a character like the Doctor, who can be arrogant, who is often the smartest person in the room, who has sacrificed so much, who feels like, in some ways, the humans owe him a debt, to then change his skin colour and be treated like this and feel unsafe... What a, like, interesting situation for that character to be in. Like, I want them to delve into that. Like, with Jodie, it almost felt like they skirted over the issue. And as a writer, my perspective is, if I was writing it, I would have Jodie come up against that a lot. I thought that was what Graham was there for. I thought when we got the fam, it was going to be, like, a really interesting take, because it was going to be like, look, this is a group of people, they're all our heroes here, but we've got Yaz and Ryan, who are going to be discounted because of their skin colour. You've got the Doctor, who in many time periods people aren't going to be listening to a woman. They're not going to think, oh, she can be the smartest person in the room, no one's going to listen. So I thought Graham was going to be that guy that's like, Graham, we need you to go undercover here. Like, we need you to get that information. I thought that was going to add to the drama of it. And I think the fact that they are addressing it here is good. I do think it's come a little bit late. I think it's a bit strange. I mean, like, in Lux, they kind of showed the idea that, like, Belinda and the Doctor deal with racism differently. And in Lux, the kind of idea that the Doctor has, and I'll get to this when I review that one, he feels like there are some things he can't change, but he wants to shine brightly. Like, he's going to enjoy himself while he's there, which is fine as a message. And I like the idea of the Doctor and Belinda having different views on it. I like that kind of idea in Community. Again, I thought they were going to do this with Yaz and Ryan, because you've got Yaz, who's joined the police, and then you've got Ryan, who's like a young black guy who's gone through a lot of pain and a lot of trauma and has a lot of anger that he can't really express. I thought that was going to be that. What an interesting... I feel like if you make your characters realistic enough, right, you give them those psychologies and then you pop them together in any situation, the drama just writes itself. didn't happen in the 13th Doctor era. So I like that vulnerability to this Doctor. I like that he has that conversation with Belinda, and he talks about why he goes to Lagos, because he feels safe, he feels like he has a family, like this is the place that he can go to relax. And there is like huge drama in that. I almost wanted them to push it further. Like, how does that impact you if you are a character who has been the cleverest person in the room, right? Everyone listens to you. And then suddenly your body changes and you're feeling like you have to seek sanctuary. Like, that, what a concept, like, what an interesting thing for the Doctor. Like, does it make him angry? Like, I just feel like they're not getting into it on a psychological level. Like, I don't feel like I'm following that journey very much. So in that scene, that kind of begins with Belinda being like, I really need to go home. Like, I am desperate to go home. And again, like, this Doctor, I think, is quite manipulative. I do think he is. And I think he covers it a lot of the time because he's trying to be, like, all fun and he's making jokes. But I think he will get what he wants. And I think they are going into that with Belinda, because I feel like in the first episode with Belinda, there really was that sense of friction where she's calling him out. She's also a little bit afraid of him, which you would be in that situation. So I thought there were some interesting parallels in this story. Like, hear me out on this, like maybe I'm just thinking too far into it. But the idea that the Doctor sees himself as like, no, I'm fun, I'm just like you, you know, we're mates. But there is a big power imbalance and he controls how she gets home. He's in charge of that. He's not really prioritising that, like he's stopping to have fun. And I feel like there's a parallel to the humans in that barbershop who are at the whims of like the gods and the barber, and they're being brought along on the ride. And, you know, like for example, Abby, she's feeding them, you know, she feels compassion for them, they're not dying. But they are still being used. They are still being taken by, like, these godlike figures, which is kind of what the Doctor is to Belinda, right? She's a passenger who wants to go home, but he's going to get what he needs to do done first. So I like that Belinda kind of relates to him and says that her nan took her to India to feel more, like, connected as well. But I still think it's very manipulative from 15. This girl just wants to go home. She really wants to go home right now. And I feel like he's not grasping that. Something about 15 is that I think he's quite insecure as a Doctor. Something he does, which I really like in the way Ncuti plays him, is, for example, the end of Dot and Bubble. This is a character who actually, I mean, he cries quite a lot. I've seen people commenting on that, and I do actually agree. I think because he's crying so much, I think sometimes it takes away from the drama. Like, sometimes I want to see on screen, like, how do I know this is next level? How do I know that this is so bad the Doctor's terrified? And I do think that's losing a bit. And not from the perspective of men can't be emotional and he can't be emotional. I just think they're not necessarily doing it at the right times. I think it's happening a lot. So there's less likely to be a situation where I see him and I think, okay, now he's hit his limit. This is terrible. Something is so bad here, it's making him cry. But something he does is, have you noticed that when 15th Doctor is really upset or angry, he laughs? I love that as a touch. Like, Ruby is crying for him in Dot and Bubble. She feels awful. And he's just like, he almost gets a bit hysterical. He laughs when he's upset. And again, that could be a really interesting comment, couldn't it? Like, if you are a person of colour as that role, are you as free to access your anger as someone like the 10th Doctor would have been? That's really interesting. But yeah, that scene with the Doctor and Belinda, like, she is at his mercy. Like, let's be honest here, she really is. She wants to go home, and he's not hurrying himself about it. He's really not. Okay, so the Doctor makes his way to the barber shop. He goes to find Omo. He realises that the people in the shop are the people from the missing posters. Something's very wrong. And then he discovers that they can't leave. They want to leave, but they can't. They're being taken on this journey against their will. And I do think there are parallels. I do think there are kind of parallels. Especially with what we get into later with, like, the power that Abby has, right, as a god, as the daughter of a god. And she doesn't necessarily recognise that in herself. Okay, so the Doctor starts to realise that you have to... This is a great idea for a story, I think, as well. So, when you tell a story, you're powering the machine. He doesn't yet know that it's like an engine, it looks like a spider. He doesn't know any of that stuff. But you have to tell a story. When you tell the story, a sort of energy is generated, and the pictures come up on the screen. I love that. I love how meta that is. I love the idea that we're watching the story, but it's about stories and the power of stories and the power of faith. Love it very much. Once the Doctor realises this, however, there is one moment in the episode where I honestly just thought, what are you doing? When you realise that it creates an image, right, a lifelike image on that window or whatever, why are you saying weeping angels? Why would you risk it? But I don't know. If he did that, would a picture of a weeping angel come up? Would the angel then get there, but also be a hostage, and would the angel then have to tell stories in the chair? How would that work? Because you can't cut the weeping angel's hair. Okay, so Omo describes the Doctor as the greatest story that he knows. He says that the barber showed up one day, he offered to give Omo a haircut. Omo thought, oh, that's a nice thing to do, and then he just completely lost the power. And Omo did try. He didn't mean for anyone else to, like, get involved in this, but the regulars, because they're like a family, right? It's like a bonding space. And Inua was talking about how in Nigerian culture, the barbershop is a place where men... He describes it as holding court, right? And it's a place where men can, like, beautify each other is how he describes it. This is a place to share your experiences. There's like deep family bonds in that space. So those people have come in anyway because they care about Omo and it's part of like their routine and their lives. So Omo describes them as being like his sons. So again, we've got that interesting idea of family with the Doctor, where the Doctor is feeling insecure. He does get into this in the episode because it's like, do you think that because I don't have a family that I don't matter? Like, do I have less worth? And I feel like the Doctor's not quite understanding himself that, like, I know he wants to be among the humans, but he's not a human. Like, he is very, very powerful. He is almost a god to them. There's always going to be that dynamic. And again, he doesn't always recognise that when he's with Belinda. So there's a little bit of character work that goes on. So you've got, like, the stories of the guys who were there. So you've got one who is, like, a relay runner. One who wanted to visit his mother in hospital. So then the Doctor gets put into the chair and he tells a story. I love this idea, right? So the idea that he can tell a story of anything. What he thinks is the most incredible story is the story of Belinda. I really like this bit, and it made me... Belinda's more caring than I realised she was. Because in the first episode, I thought I liked her a lot, but I thought she could be quite, like, cold sometimes. Like, she's very efficient. Not cold, but efficient, right? Which is understandable. My sense of her in that first episode, I can't wait to review the first episode, actually, with the character work around Belinda. Which, again, seems to have kind of fallen off a bit. I kind of like that no-nonsense thing she has, right? Like, she's compartmentalising it because her job is so stressful. And she's very much like, right, this is what we've got to get done. Like, there we go. Spoiler alert, like, there were rumours about the Rani coming back. I can't wait to talk about that, because let me just say, the new Rani, Archie Punjabi, is so hot. Sorry to like bring that here. It could be written terribly, right? It could be the most awful, rubbish thing ever, and I'd be sitting there watching it like this. I would just, yeah, it's my weakness. My weakness. Unfortunately, it's characters like that. But I thought, like, there was something almost Rani-ish there, in that sense that, like, the way she's healing people, like, she's quite quick, she's quite efficient, she learns quickly, she's just sort of like, look, no, never mind the fuss or anything like that, like, we're just sorting it out. But yeah, I really liked that story. Actually made me a bit tearful. I know it sounds really silly, like, maybe I was just really emotional at the time, but the idea that she's going home, it's her own grandma's birthday. She's been working so hard, and then that woman comes in, she basically saves her life because the consultant can't really be bothered. They kind of undermine her, she sticks to her guns, she ends up saving the woman's life. And she thinks nothing of it. And again, like, this is... I think you can tell that Inua understands that heart of Doctor Who and what makes a companion. And the sort of people that the Doctor surrounds himself with. I feel like I'd get on with him on this. Like, I think we'd be in agreement, because he sees these people as special because they do what they can. You know, they put themselves out. They are selfless. They will try and help someone. They'll try and stand up for someone. And they don't ask for, like, praise for it. They just do it because they think it's the right thing to do. And I love how when he tells the story of Belinda, it fills up the batteries of the ship. That as a message is absolutely gorgeous. Like, the idea that we don't need, like, fantasy stuff, like, sci-fi. Like, the most important stories happen. And again, like, even in sci-fi, I think that the most important thing to any story is the characters. The relationships between characters, their psychologies, how they feel, how they interconnect with each other. So I love that idea that it could be a mundane style setting, but it's the greatest story you've ever heard. That, to me, is very Doctor Who. And I think Inua really understands that. So then the Doctor starts to understand that he feels like Omo has planned this. So from his perspective, and I like this as well, because he's not entirely right. It makes sense because he's got a lot of extra insecurities now. He thinks that he's been, like, offered up like a sacrifice. But I love how that isn't how it is. Like, he's not quite understanding that to these humans, like, he wants to be among humans, but he's different. He is like a god. Like, he's very powerful. Omo hasn't got him there as a sacrifice. He's got him there as a savior. He's got him there as a hope. He's thought, this is the man who put out the fire. I believe that this man, this god, I have faith in him, and I believe he will save us. But it is really interesting character work, and I loved it that he got so angry with Omo. Like, he almost rejected him or disowned him. It felt like a real personal pain. And again, I love that for this doctor. And he says, because I have no home, I'm what? Expendable. And Omo's trying to say, but these people have families that need them. And the doctor's like, well, don't I matter? Because I don't have a family. So Omo says, no, doctor, it was the stories. You had the stories. That's all I was thinking. The doctor says, I loved this shop. I loved you, Omo. I thought it was a home for me, and I thought I was safe. And again, gorgeous. Love it in the context of this doctor. Like, what does it mean to be, like, in the community? The doctor literally, like, cuts him off in anger. He's like, we're going no contact. So he says, do not talk to me ever again. I trusted you with both of my hearts and everything that I am. How could you? And it's like, it's so juicy to watch that, genuinely, because it's like, I want to scream like, no, doctor, you are like a god. He adores you. He is still that little boy. And I know he's like grown up, but the impact you've had on his life as that person that helps, he sees you as a savior. It's part of his fate. Like, he is calling to you. He thinks you'll be able to fix it. It's a mark of love. He's not trying to sacrifice him. And again, like, it's strong character writing. You can tell it comes from a playwright who writes characters a lot, because what you've got with the Doctor is you've got misdirected anger. And I think a lot of this episode focuses on the themes of misdirected anger. And I think this politically as well. Sometimes people will say to me, why are you always going on about centrists and liberals, like, when the right's there? And it's like, no, the right are much worse. Like, the far right are doing evil things. But the feeling of it is more painful when it's somebody you think will understand and come from your group. It's like when you get the LGBT community and then you have people being transphobic. And it's that pain of thinking, we were a sanctuary, like, we had a safe space, and now it's like being thrown back because you're trying to protect yourself. Like, it does feel worse because you expect it. You expect it from the outside. I think, like, with Dot and Bubble, there's been valid criticism on how that episode went down. But, you know, I feel like there was that expectation. Like, the Doctor wasn't thinking, like, this is my kin. Like, this is my safety. He was kind of aware he could put up that barrier. It's very hard when you're in that space of sanctuary and then you get hit by that, because it's unexpected and it's not nice. I really liked that little detail. I felt that. And I think it maybe does make sense of, maybe I'm giving it too much credit and I'm just putting my own stuff onto it, but I think it makes sense of why Ruby was the Doctor's first companion, was 15's companion, because Ruby adores him. Ruby is like a little sister character. Like, anything he does, like, she's awed by him, you know? And I think he needs that. I think that because of his new circumstances, I think he needs that love and for someone to, like, really admire him. I can imagine, like, the psychology of it all is so juicy, it's gorgeous. Okay, so the Doctor then tries to get out. He almost kills them by opening the door. So we see that there's, like, a giant metal spider. Gorgeous idea, love the visual, never seen anything like that in the show before. Like, I just like it when the show does something different. Right, meanwhile, Belinda is now trying to get to the Doctor. She's had a situation in the TARDIS where the alarms keep blaring and she's coming to save him. She sees a little child that disappeared. It's Poppy from Space Babies. Okay, so I don't know what's coming in the next episode. The last episode I saw was the Interstellar Song Contest, but there are rumours and rumblings around about what that might mean and how very important Space Babies might end up being, which I have to admit is quite funny, because imagine that being the thing you need to go back and rewatch. I've seen lots of people saying this, but Space Babies is fine, right? It's fine, it's fun. It's a bit gross. It makes me feel a bit sick. I can't eat watching it. I feel a bit, I don't like it. It's too gross for me. But apparently that's becoming important again. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if I'd use that as the one I would particularly lean on. I think there have been other episodes that are more strong, like 73 Yards or something, I think would be stronger to lean on. It does feel like Space Babies is haunting the narrative now. So Belinda makes it into the barbershop. She's now trapped with them. And then you get some interesting backstory for Abby, which I enjoyed, because you've got the fact that, so obviously she was like, her father treated her like she was property. So she was like, her fate was going to be decided by a bet. I love that kind of thing because it makes me think of, like, I did classical civilization when I was at school, and I'm, like, obsessed with, like, the Iliad. Like, I really am obsessed with it. I've got a big interest in that. And that idea of women's roles, the idea of, like, being a demigod, what it means to be, like, the child of a god. You know, the idea that these goddesses are so powerful, but they're also still at the mercy of a lot of these male gods. And she says to Belinda, like, did he leave you behind and did he tell you to wait? Belinda's like, no, I came looking for him. But I still feel like there's something... Abby is seeing something here, right? I think she is recognising a bit of the Doctor being a bit hypocritical. Because, yeah, Belinda's come to find him, but I still think the Doctor's quite manipulative with Belinda. I still think she's quite conditioned. I do think when she sees that, there's almost a sense that she's like, well, I see through this situation. Like, you want somebody to, like, adore you and have faith in you and see you as a hero. Like, you're not taking it home, are you? Like, you're taking your time. So then you get the idea of masks again, and that was in, you know, Lucky Day dealt heavily with the idea of masks. So there are, like, themes coming through this series, the idea of who Mrs. Flood really is. So initially, the barber basically tells a load of lies and says, yeah, I'm all the gods. I'm a Nancy. I'm Loki. I'm all these things. I'm all those gods. And I like this speech. He says, he's been all these gods in many cultures, in many worlds, in many incarnations. It does not matter what I'm called, it matters who I am and what I do. Belinda asks, and what is it that you do? And he says, I begin all things. I am the voice in the empty void. I am the spark, the seed, the dark nucleus, the lie that tells the truth, the well of words, the godfather griot, the jelly before, the telltale itself, and this Doctor, this is my domain. What a bold move if you're lying. I love it. I love that speech. The audacity of the man. Like, you've got to root for him a little. But again, like, on a sense, like, outside of the story, this is an episode which is analysing the role of the story and the author, right? And that is essentially what the author is. It's getting into that. Like, you are a god if you're an author of your story. You're putting all these things in place. You are in control as the writer of whose voices you prioritise, whose perspective you prioritise, like what circumstances you put people in. Again, this is something I was saying about Lucky Day, and I think it actually did badly. This episode understands that. It wants an analysis of whose voices are heard. Like, what is... reality is shaped... like, history is shaped by the victors. Like, if you have narrative control as the author, that is a godlike power that you need to be really... you need to be careful with that. Right, for some reason the Doctor and Belinda start laughing. I understand the Doctor laughing because he's like, that's clearly... you are clearly not the gods. I do enjoy that. Why Belinda starts laughing, again, I'm not actually sure. I don't know how Belinda would know. How would she know he's lying? She's just very good on body language. Okay, so the Doctor then says that he's met these gods. He's even watched Marvel movies with one of them all the way up until Endgame. And he says that Anansi purposely lost a bet to make him marry one of his daughters. I know the gods and you are not them. So then the barber says, but I was the one behind them all. Just something I enjoyed here. Like, probably, like, it's just me liking my Greek myths and legends. You know, like in like the Iliad, you'd have like the gods and goddesses, but they would have favourites. Like, they would have humans that they kind of rooted for. Like, they would have their own favourite characters. And in like the Trojan War, you've got like different gods coming to blows because it's like, well, that's my guy there and he's going to fight your guy. I'm going to help my guy out here. The idea that Abby's got that compassion, it feels like she's rooting for him. It feels like she's rooting for the barber. Okay, so he says that he was once human. So the idea being that the gods have their power because he told the stories. You have to try and explain who the gods are on a human level that humans will understand because something is so fantastical, so far from them, so powerful. It's a very delicate thing to do. So he starts weaving the strands across the cultures. He's trying to build that bond. The gods needed that connector to connect them to the people. And in return, the people worshipped them and gave them faith, and then the gods became more powerful. So he talks about how he took a strand of the god's blood, apparently, and he built like a web-like structure, which he calls the Nexus. So it cross-connects concepts, cultures, and ideas. The structure he's making is it looks like the structure in 73 Yards. So he worked for them all that time, and all he wanted was recognition, but they told him he should know his place. And he had primed the Nexus so well that it now worked without him. And am I reaching with this? Maybe that is a slight comment on like AI and authorship and who's making the money from the fiction and the stories we tell. So he was like kicked out of the story now. His purpose had been fulfilled. They didn't need him anymore. All he had was his story engine. Basically, him and Abby want vengeance against the gods for this. Right, so then we get a flashback to Jo Martin's Doctor. And the thing that's really strange about this, right? I think she needs to be the next Doctor at this point. Because I feel like the Doctor does take the faces of people from before. I like the idea of him thinking, well, this Doctor did not have her own free choices. You know, her life was really controlled. I want this face to have another go. I think that would be great if that's the case. But the way it was described in Unleashed, it's almost like Rusty Davies just wanted her there because it's a story about people of colour and they kind of wanted to weave her in. So I'm not really sure, like, I suppose I need to see the rest of the series and where they're going to go with her. But it's a bit weird, and it doesn't necessarily work either, because, I don't know, the whole idea of the memories the Doctors might have and all these different things, I don't know if that works. I might be wrong, but I just think it doesn't quite work. But then we get an interesting part, because the Barber is saying, like, you know, we're off to kill the gods now. We need to get rid of them. They stole my work. We're going to kill the gods. But then the Doctor makes a speech on behalf of faith. And I like this. So personally, I have faith. I'm a Christian. You can see I have a cross here. But I do like that idea that humans across cultures have all needed something to reach for. You know, not always in religion. I suppose in people who are really like devoted to Doctor Who, in some ways that's it, right? It's the heroes of fiction. It's something that we need stories to understand our world and understand each other. We want to be connected to each other, and that does cross cultures. And I like the Doctor says that by destroying the gods and their influence, it takes away the essence of humanity. And I love that. Even, I think Russell T Davies is not religious at all. He often uses, like, ideas about faith in his work. And I kind of like that idea that it's almost like regardless of the gods that you worship, or if you even do, it's the effect that faith has on people, good and bad. That's what makes humanity so interesting. Right, we are all reaching for something more. That's why we're watching the show. You don't have to be religious to understand that we reach for stories to recontextualise our own stories, to feel seen, to connect with other people, to understand the world around us. We have a need for stories. We are a creature, like there's probably loads of aliens out there that we haven't yet met because we're so far behind, and we allow people to live in poverty and evil things to happen, and the aliens are probably watching us and thinking, my gosh, they're so primitive, we don't want anything to do with them. That is how we can get through to each other. Stories is like that thread that connects us across cultures and countries. And it's also why, for example, like with what's going on with Palestine currently, they desperately want to sever the idea of those stories and the humanity of the Palestinians, because once we start to realise that we have something in common with every other person on the planet, like literally wherever they are, in stories, in feelings of faith and belonging, like these human themes cross the globe. I wish more people understood that, because then we wouldn't have so many terrible things happening. The Doctor says that a world without stories, it would mean that humans couldn't pass on their traditions. Belinda tries to talk to Abby. Right, she says, hurt people hurt people. Your father hurt you. The difference between good and evil is what we do with that pain. I 100% agree. Love that morality. I do think that it's a little bit clunky in the episode, because the episode isn't long enough. I think a lot of the time when Belinda's speaking, it doesn't feel like... I don't know, I'm not getting a lot of character out of Belinda when she's speaking. But as a moral, I completely agree. And it's so at odds with, like, again, like the issues I have with Lucky Day. And I feel like if you're from a minority group, right, if you're someone like Inua, you are, like, intimately aware of how collective trauma, generational trauma and pain can manifest. It can drive people to be so good and selfless and kind and to protect other vulnerable people. It can also drive people to complete that cycle, you know, to keep it going, because they feel powerless and they want to feel powerful. That's something that as a minority you've constantly got going on in your mind. Okay, so then Abby says she is going to tell a story. This part of the episode was beautiful, educational, and I really thought this was a real high point. Like, just watching it, so beautiful. When you watch it back, the art. This is the kind of thing, again, I think the Jodie era does this quite well. There are some episodes in the Jodie era where they really, like, push those visuals. And it feels so unique, right? You can feel, like, a real heart in this episode. And there are things in this episode, like I say, that I don't think land. But I feel like there is a constant thread of humanity through it that really makes it feel like I feel safe with it, if that makes sense. There is a real human heart to it that it's trying to get across here. So she talks about, in the times of slavery, those who escaped, they would return sometimes to free others, but they weren't allowed to carry paper, they were stopped and they were searched. So women made their hair into different shapes and patterns, and they would literally weave maps into their hair and pass it on from mother to daughter. And this was something I had absolutely no idea was even a thing. And I just feel like, again, it's that that human spirit. It's the, sorry to get into Andor here, which is incredible, but the idea that freedom is such a pure idea and that people are, love triumphs, the idea to be free triumphs, the idea of it being passed from mother to daughter, like that love, passing someone the baton, the hope of it, like the pain, like I just think it's hard to, that was really, really moving, and I thought was a really, I just never knew that was even a thing, and how incredibly heartbreaking. So she has passed on a map to freedom for the Doctor. And also that idea again about, you know, there's power in telling the stories. If you have a narrative, if you have a platform, like, that's power in itself. So there's a reason why the slaves weren't allowed to carry paper, clearly. They wanted to destroy those stories. That happens all across the board. When great evil happens, they need to dehumanize people. They need to destroy their stories. They need to destroy their culture. They need to pretend it never existed. Because if we can recognize those things, like what's going on in Palestine right now, if we recognize the history of Palestine, the many differences in the people, you know, they're not a monolithic people, then you start to realize we're all just human beings here. But the way that people will always find a way. The idea, like that story really makes me feel very emotional. The idea that even without, you've been denied words, you're being denied that language almost, which is power. As a narrator, as an author, trying to separate you from humanity, and yet humans will find a way to pass on that message. Just absolutely gorgeous to think that they managed to do that with their hair. You can't silence a culture. You can't silence that history. You can do whatever, you can try, and a lot of evil people will try, but you cannot destroy that faith. That is something you cannot destroy. You can destroy bodies, you can destroy cultures, you cannot destroy faith, and I just think that's very powerful as a message, considering what is going on today, and also how in our schools right now, I mean, we're obviously going back into a right-wing swing at the moment. The Labour Party has become the Tories. Reform is hugely successful now, they're climbing. We have a real pushback to telling the stories of how diverse the people of this country are, like with the Windrush generation. Those stories are going to be the key. Like when you think about how they're teaching British history in schools, they're calling them British values. They are trying to erase the history of colonialism and other cultures. Nationalism's rising. It's like, oh, we're the supreme ones and we're wise and look how civilized we are compared to other people. And it's like very easy to tell kids that and to make that your message when you're telling the stories. Right? It's incredibly easy. And that's what's happening right now. So this is an important episode. The Doctor and Belinda, they go to the story engine. I like the visual of the brain being inside. It's like a brain that looks like a tree, but inside that there's a heart. And again, that idea of like the heart of a people, the heart of like humanity is in its stories, is in its faith, is in what is passed through the generations. Okay, then we get Belinda asks the barber, "You did all this to kill them?" And he says, "Of course, they deserve it." And Belinda says, "Rubbish, this is your ego." And again, like, I like the morality of it, even though it feels a bit clunky. I don't feel like Belinda knows enough about what's even going on to be making these comments, honestly. But I do like the idea that it's like, hurt people, and like, you've gone through really, really bad stuff. But like, you know, please don't hurt other people. Please don't hurt other people in this. The Doctor then talks about having met Hemingway, and he challenges the barber to a short story with 6 words. So the Doctor's story is, I'm born, I die, I'm born. And that encapsulates this episode and what I think Inua is really saying successfully with this episode. It's like, you people will try to use oppression and force and silence people, but the hope is reborn. Right? It might be generations down the line, as long as there are stories, as long as we're connecting to each other. I'm born, I die, I will regrow. So the never-ending story of the Doctor, but also it's kind of like the story of humanity. It's kind of overloading the machine. The machine can't handle that. Okay, we get clips of the Doctors on the TV screen. I don't always like when they put the other Doctors in the episode, but in this instance it works because of how, when you talk about a story, you're seeing the visuals. I also know the morality of Inua is good because the particular bits he's chosen to show are basically the Doctor at his best, in my opinion. We've got Just This Once Everybody Lives from the Ninth Doctor. I love the Ninth Doctor. We've got 12 saying, when you fire that first shot, no matter how right you feel, you have no idea who's going to die. And then you've got 13 saying, when people need help, I never refuse. And to pick those out of the previous Doctors is like, how do I encapsulate who the Doctor is to me? I think Anua's done a great job. I think he's done a really good job with those. That is the essence of the Doctor, I think. The barber challenges the doctor, says, you're not going to go ahead with your plans because I've heard that you protect life. The doctor says, this is what I'm doing. You destroy the gods, you wreck 7 billion lives, 7 billion or us. I control the engine, you control the doors, let them out. You were once mortal, their lives and their stories will end because of you. Do you want that? Do you? Gorgeous bit of writing, even when you have sympathy for the barber and what he's going through with the gods being like terrible bosses. Terrible. Like the idea that like you have a choice right now. The choice is, do you let these people go? Like, if you care about stories, are you going to end these stories right now? It's that idea that every human being has a complex story of their own. Don't kill people. And the barber opens the doors. Love that. Gorgeous. Good, good, good. Okay. And again, like, as a writer, if you love stories and you love characters, like, you have to accept that even, like, your own life is a complex story. It's like a web in itself, isn't it? Like all the people that have had influence on you, the good you've done, the bad you've done, your trajectory. Like, to acknowledge that complexity in even one person should hopefully, if you think more deeply into stuff, bring you to a point where it's like, do you know what? We all have more in common than we have differences, and there are ways to reach out to each other. It makes it very hard as a writer, I think, to deny the humanity of others. You can really dislike other people, but I feel like it's much harder to dehumanize those people if you are understanding that we are that complex mesh of all different things. We're not just one thing. Doctor tells Belinda to go, that he'll be right behind her, so he decides to stay with the villain, and the barber seems ready to die there. And the doctor asks him what his 6-word story would be. He says, what would the essence of your life be? I want you to live long enough to write it. Don't let this be how your story ends. I was up really late the other night because I wasn't feeling very well, and I was thinking, I wonder what the barber's story would actually be. And I thought of like, I don't know, this is my attempt. If you have got this far in the review and you have an attempt of like the 6-word story of the barber. So mine was hurt, grew cold, lost myself. That's my 6-word story for the barber. But I love this with the 15th Doctor. Like, he is absolutely desperate. Like, he knows he can't force somebody to stop being stubborn. He can't force someone to do the right thing and to show humanity and to have worth, even, because this is a guy that's like preparing to, he thinks his life's over. He's preparing to go. Like, the shame and the guilt of him is leaving him there. He's going to stay on that engine. And it's that message of the Doctor being like, look, it doesn't matter. You've done some awful things. You need to take accountability. You need to make it right. Like, it's not the end of your story. It is not the end of your story. Till the day you're dead, the story hasn't ended. You have power now. Like, please make it right. I want you to make it right. Do not let your ego and your stubbornness stop you from potentially being better. And that there's so many real, like, villains in this world. And you sometimes just think to yourself, put aside your pride. If you could put aside your pride and your ego and your stubbornness, if you could accept that love, that redemption, right? If you could accept that hand that's saying, come back, right? Come back to us and you can do better. Some people just won't cross that line. But the fact the Doctor is trying so hard, beautiful. I really love that for him. So they make it out just in time. The guys from the barbershop start worshipping Abby. So she becomes very regal. You know, she says to the relay runner, like, rise, little brother. Run like the wind. And then I love this bit. I love this bit. So the barber is literally sitting, he's curled up on the floor. Like, he's so ashamed. He started to come back in touch with his humanity, but the guilt and the shame is actually, like, destroying him right now. And I think he's in shock and he's defeated, and this is a man who's kind of collapsed, right? He's imploded. And the Doctor kneels down to his level. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And he offers him humanity. He doesn't, like, absolve him of what he's done, but he offers him the humanity of kneeling to his level and acknowledging him. The barber says, all I wanted was to be credited for my work. I have spent my entire existence serving the gods. What will I do now? The Doctor's advice is, what you do best. Keep collecting stories. Start your own barbershop. So then we've got Omo, says he's retiring. He says that he kind of apologises to the Doctor. He says he really thought the Doctor could handle anything, which is why he did what he did. He says, you were part of my community. I should have protected you too. I'm sorry. The Doctor apologises as well. They have a hug. That's really nice. And it is Omo who then sees the barber. Right, and the barber, again, he's so ashamed. His head is facing away from everyone, like he is curled up. And Omo reaches out a hand to him. And the barber is so shocked. Like, this, it made me emotional. The barber, like, looking at that hand, he's like, he can't quite believe it. He thinks, I don't deserve it. After what I've done, how can you possibly show me this kindness. Like, that level of kindness, he doesn't know how to handle it. He's stunned. Omo says, let all this settle and continue. And at first the barber pulls away. And this is good. I love this bit. It makes me emotional. So he says, I don't belong here. I don't even have a name for people to trust. And he just pulls his hand away. It's not that pulling his hand away like he's angry with Omo. It's the truth of it, which is that almost like childish feeling of like, I don't deserve love. Like, after what I've done, I don't deserve this kindness. I don't deserve that. So Omo gives him a name. He gives him the name of his father. And the barber says, thank you. I don't deserve this kindness. Omo shakes his hand. And you get the impression that the barber's like been reborn as a new person. And I just think I get emotional thinking about it. It's the sort of thing that I just love. It's like, it's sad. Absolutely beautiful that the barber says, I don't deserve this kindness. And also it's like the idea that we are all connected, and it's a chain reaction, because hurt people hurt people. So if you hurt people, then they might go on to hurt other people and the chain carries on. But also that's the same with compassion and kindness, right? Sometimes if you can show that compassion and kindness, if someone's shown you that kindness, right? So say you're in a really bad spot, you've done wrong, and someone has shown you like forgiveness and compassion, I think you can pass that on too. I think you can look at somebody else in your shoes and you can say to them, like, it's not too late. That's the story passing on, isn't it? It's that web between people, which is, it's not only the bad stuff that has to pass. It's hope as well. We have a conversation between Belinda and Abby. Belinda says, I understand if you hate him. But Abby says, I won't have that in my heart. What did you say? Hurt people hurt people. And she's amused by the fact that a mortal is teaching a god life lessons. And again, like, where was this for Lucky Day? Right. I completely believe they could have saved Conrad, or that at least they could have tried to save Conrad here. Like, especially because, like, when you think about the barber who was, like, mistreated by the gods, he was presumably an adult at the time. If you're a kid that's being mistreated by your parents, I feel like there's even more, like, hope that you can get to that person. Like, I've said this in my other review, but, like, what could Conrad have been if he was given compassion instead of being part of that cycle of abuse? Like, what could have been different there? The barber talks to the doctor a bit. He promises he'll be back for a haircut with the barber, and he wants to hear the 6-word story. And again, like, I've got another thing in my notes here. Like, I just stay up at night thinking about Doctor Who and Andor and all these kind of things. And I wrote here, what about be better than what came before? Is that bad? Is that good? Is it rubbish? It could be rubbish. Okay. Abby has a moment with the barber. She gives him that sort of godlike acknowledgement where she's like, all right, let's see what you do now, right? It's up to you. You've got to do the hard work. I'm off. The Doctor and Belinda go back to the TARDIS. Belinda has completely, like, forgotten. She's really on a high after this experience. She's not like, you need to get me home now. Like, you've basically kidnapped me. But she says she saw a child, a spooky child. And the Doctor says maybe stories were getting mixed up somehow. Obviously she saw Poppy from Space Babies, so that is a cliffhanger. And I just feel sad that people are going to have to go back and watch Space Babies, but it's gross. It's not a bad story, but it's very gross. Like, you watch it and it's like, you feel like you want to have a bath. I don't like the snot monster. It's just such a disgusting idea. I don't like it. Okay, so yeah, this is like a very mixed episode for me. Like, a lot of good, a lot of stuff that I don't think worked. I appreciate that it tried. Yeah, I mean, it's enjoyable. It was an enjoyable episode. It made me feel warm inside. I like to believe that... I know there are some people in the world who are, like, really, really evil, but I genuinely do believe that a lot of the time you can kind of stop that at the root, with compassion and kindness, especially towards young people. Then hopefully you're not going to get people that continue the cycle and keep lashing out. And I like the idea of forgiveness and redemption, not as something that you're required to do. It's a choice. I liked that in the episode, how Belinda was kind of saying, like, it's fine if you hate him. It's absolutely fine. That's not wrong. But I do like the idea that it is possible for people to be redeemed, and it is possible to forgive. And that it's your choice, basically, but it is something that can be done. I believe that wholeheartedly. So yeah, what a nice little moral story. I enjoyed it. I really did. Pacing wasn't the best. There were things I'd tweak. But yeah, I'm glad I saw it. So next week we're going to talk about, I don't even know, I might even make it in a few days' time. It depends how quickly I can edit this. We're going to do the Interstellar Song Contest. Yeah, I won't get into that now. It's going to be a video. Let's just say that. It's going to be a video. I can't believe it, honestly. And to imagine coming from this to that is so jarring. Like, but the series as a whole, I feel, has been quite jarring. I don't know what the morals are. I don't know. I've seen theories from people that the reason it's inconsistent is because the Rani has done something and it's all stories and, you know, everything's made up and, you know, that's why it's not working. If that's the case, that's very clever, but it's also quite amusing to me because the fact that even is a theory tells me that even the people that are enjoying it are acknowledging that there is like this weird disconnect and a shift and something that feels off. Maybe when we've got to the end of the series I'll have more like ideas on that, but I think it's to do with characterization and themes. I think the morals are so all over the place. And I've seen some people saying like, oh, it's good to have morals change, but I don't think it is. Like, I think, you know, your perspective can change and the context can change, but I think the morals of a show aren't really something you want shifting about all the time. I don't think that. I feel it's weird, isn't it? It's like when you have principles, you don't really change your principles. Like, it's interesting to investigate them, you know, and test them. But I don't know if I want them moving all the time because I never know if I'm coming or going. I don't know if the doctor's going to see a bad person and murder them or if he's going to reach out his hand and try and rescue them. I never know. And it's so inconsistent. But yeah, okay. Thank you for watching. Please tell me what you think in the replies. I don't imagine this will get many views. It's very long. But I'm doing it also for me to get it out of my system. But yeah, I really respect Anura as a writer. And many good things to enjoy about this episode. But also many things that I don't think worked. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Love you loads. And I'll see you very soon. Bye.